I want to welcome you here. I'm Bob Burns, Central East District Superintendent, and along with Gary Kennedy, we want to welcome you to the Phoenix area pre-conference briefing. So thank you all for being here. Have agendas been distributed? No. Okay, never mind then. We're gonna get started here, and I'd like to invite you to join with me in prayer. Lord God, as we gather tonight and we think about our annual conference time together, our annual conference as an organization, as well as our annual conference meeting coming up in June, and our theme of Inspire, we just ask, Lord, that you would inspire us tonight, that you would get us pumped up for this wonderful experience of gathering together and working at the ministries that you're asking of us as United Methodists in this part of the world. Bless this evening, I pray. Amen. I'm giving this to Anthony.
Let's check. Oh, here I am. Good evening. It's so nice to be here and to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about annual conference. Now, it's a little tempting for me to give you all the information that you ever need or wanted. But then I don't want you to come to annual conference and say, I've seen this, I've heard this, I've experienced this before. So our intention tonight is we're going to depend on some of our leadership to give you just a little bit of a taste of what we are hoping you will experience at annual conference. And as our superintendent indicated, the theme selected for annual conference this year is Inspire. And it follows last year's theme, which was? And it follows the previous year's, which was? Okay, so there's a sequence here that I hope will be a part of how we live together at annual conference, and then how it lives on in your ministries beyond. That having imagined, used our creativity to think about ways in which God is leading us, we would have then found ways to jumpstart, get going, some of the things at our churches. And then this year, I want us to focus on the realization that none of this would have much meaning for us in the work that we're doing for Jesus Christ unless it is work that inspires others. So when you think of inspire, what inspires you? Anybody what inspires you? I am inspired by what? Passion. When you see passion, it inspires you. Yes. What else? I'm inspired by children. When you see children, you get inspired, don't you? Yes. What else?
Good preaching.
Good preaching inspires you. Yes. Many of us are inspired by a good story. And United Methodists as a whole are known for our ability to tell good stories that touch our heart, bring meaning to our lives, and inspire us. And to me, the word inspire is so much, it is really together with the idea of God's Spirit. So the inspiration has to do with the Spirit of God. So my hope is that what we do in annual conference this year is going to touch your lives, your hearts, your souls in a very deep place, and it's going to move you to then turn and in your churches and in your communities to inspire them, to breathe the Spirit of God into their lives. And that's what will happen if we're successful at living into this theme of inspire. Okay? There's so much that we're going to do. You're going to hear a little bit about the different things that will happen, and we have some of our leadership that will share some of those good things. So I'm going to just turn us over to the next person who's going to lead us, Anthony Tang.
We've got a big change happening at annual conference, and one of the things that we may have been very used to was our exhibit hall. We have many different committees and groups in our annual conference, and our exhibit hall was an opportunity to display much of what was happening. Unfortunately, what I have heard over and over again is that many people said, oh, the exhibit hall. I'm going to get there in a little while, but first I've got other things to do. And then that was the first day and the second day and the third day. All the while we had volunteers who were sitting in the exhibit hall waiting while so often it was missed. And what we've tried to do is revamp the ministry fair so it's going to look completely different. For one, it'll be, instead of for 4.5 days, it's going to be for 2 hours. On Thursday from noon until 2, it'll be a 2-hour experience. We will have lunch available for you, scattered around the room, so you may need to wander around to find it. We will have a 26-foot climbing wall, a bounce house. Our Tongans will be, one of our Tongan fellowship churches will be dancing. There will be a lot. As well, we have a few groups, and if we move ahead, you'll see. One of them is our emergency response team. They're excited to tell you about the training that they have available to help, and our chainsaw ministry team, which can teach you how to bring down an entire tree in case there is a disaster. The Lydia Patterson Institute will be, and Habitat for Humanity is going to be there as well. The North District Youth, Wheat, Faith Ecumenical Institute, the Arizona Faith Network, Discipleship Ministries, Rainbow Acres, the Foundation, the Credit Union, the Christmas Project, Health and Caring, Hope for the Hopeless, and so many more that are going to be there. And this actually isn't all of the groups that will be represented. All of these are going to be there with, and they've been given one task, and their one task is to help our local churches and local ministries. And so we'd love for you to come in and visit. Now we've got already over 80 tables, and as you can tell, it's going to be a large room. There's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be craziness, and I'll be honest, there's not going to be a lot of chairs nor a lot of tables. So what this means is this isn't a place to sit down and have a long conversation with someone. But what this is a place to do is to be able to wander around, to see the variety of things that are being offered, and if something catches your interest, to be able to share your name with them or for them to share their name with you, to be able to exchange that information and to facilitate conversation as we go. It's an experiment. It could be fabulous, it could be terrible, but we're going to try it, and I hope you'll have an open attitude to see what may come. It will be crazy, but I think very exciting. It'll be on Thursday at lunchtime. Everybody at annual conference will be welcome to come in and experience our ministry fair.
Hi, I'm Jim Nibelink, the conference lay leader. I'm going to talk a little bit about something we do only every 4 years. So if you're a veteran of less than 4 years, you haven't done this before. If you've done it before, you recall that we have General Conference every 4 years. In the year preceding General Conference, we have 3 special elections or votes that we take. And this year is no exception, since General Conference will be in Portland in 2016, May 10th to 20th. This year, you recall, I'm sure fondly, how General Conference elections go. They try your patience, they give you time to nap. You kind of wonder what's happening sometimes. Well, we've got a new way of approaching these elections. And Anthony has a little gizmo. Everyone is going to temporarily have custody of a gizmo. Now that's a technical ecclesiastical term. This is how we are going to vote for the 3 special elections that we have for General Conference and for potentially endorsing an Episcopal candidate, a candidate for bishop. So there are 3 votes. There's the one to say, does the conference want to endorse a candidate for the Episcopal office, a candidate for bishop? And then there are the 2 elections to send delegates to the general and jurisdictional conferences. Clergy vote for clergy, lay people vote for lay people. So those take place instead of over a 2 or 3 day period wondering what's going on. We've allotted something like an hour to complete all 3 of these elections. So we hope that we're going to give you some practice with the said gizmo when we start the process, so that we'll be confident that each one is having their vote recorded in a practice session, and then we will go into the actual elections. So if we are successful, this will be a much less work-intensive election period than we've experienced here before. So we look forward to this, and we thank Anthony for coming up with the possibility for us to do this. And of course, you have to turn the little gizmo back in, or you will not get any food for the rest of annual conference.
Okay. For some of us, one of the important things about annual conference is working on legislation, resolutions that come to annual conference that are asking the annual conference as a body to consider important matters. Oftentimes it's a matter related to social justice. Sometimes it's an administrative matter having to do with pension or health benefits, those kinds of things. But having a time to actually come together and consider these resolutions or other legislative pieces is an important part for many of the people who come to annual conference. This year, we're going to rename times when we actually do our conversations together. What I've experienced, I don't know if you're into sports, but I happened to be watching TV, and one of my trips somewhere, actually it was in Europe, where they don't play basketball like we do and they don't play football like we do, but they have a couple other sports that are really interesting. And what I observed was that experience that you call huddle. You know, and it was quite a dramatic kind of thing, that the players were in a circle, they were linking arm to shoulder, and they were moving in a wonderful dance. It was quite interesting, and then they would give a shout, hurrah, and that was it. It seemed to me that what we really want to do at annual conference is not have just conversation or debate across the room, but that we are placed in round tables for this experience of annual conference so that we can have a time to talk with the people around the table about the things that are being proposed or presented. So instead of calling these experiences legislative conversations or something like that, I coined the phrase holy huddle. Holy huddle. So there are times in the annual conference where we will be called to do a holy huddle. And this is my hope. My hope and dream would be to see around all the tables people really engaging in conversation. Not about the weather, not about sports, not about the news that's breaking, but really about the issue that is being brought to us to talk about. So the hope is that when we have a holy huddle, we will have honest conversation about a variety of topics, and that in our conversations around the table, we will exchange ideas, we will listen, and everyone will have a chance to speak, and above all, it will be holy in that as we come together in this conversation, God's Spirit will infuse the conversation. I think this is one of the ways that we get to talk about some of the contentious and very heavily debated hot-button issues of the day. It's also a time when we just get to know one another and get to know the faith that brings us together. So look on your annual conference schedule for those holy huddles, times when we will talk with one another and the Spirit of God will be present with us. Well, we're going to talk now about some of the holy huddles that we'll be engaged in.
If you want to end annual conference on a positive note, end it by giving every church a check for $2,000. That was pretty good, wasn't it? The only stipulation was that it needed to be used to start something new that reached new people. That was the only thing you had to do. And we've been hearing stories about what people have done, and so we've been excited about that. But we also said last year that we would come back and we would report to one another just some of the things that we did. So we want to make time at annual conference to celebrate those attempts. This is not a time where we're saying, oh, let's compete with one another and see who did the best thing. We all have different contexts, we all have different gifts, we all have different leaders. It really is just to share. Now, it's not a matter, did you succeed or fail? If you failed and you learned something from it, then you succeeded. So it really is a time of just coming and sharing with one another and seeing what we did. So we think that's going to be an exciting time for us to talk about that and next steps. As also a part of this, one of the things we've been working on, and we have a poster. Every church should have your poster. Do you have it by now? Good. If you don't, you can get it at the district office. And what you're supposed to do with that is to somehow visually communicate what you did with the $2,000. It can be anything you want, and then bring that to annual conference, and there will be easels set up all over the place. Just find an easel and set that up. Now, as we've gone out through the conference, we've just asked people, so what have you done? We've heard some pretty exciting stories. A pastor, as soon as she got back to her church, she said, I'd like to double this amount, and challenged her church, and they ended up more than tripling that amount for what they wanted to do to reach new people. On the other side, we were at a church about a month ago, and the bishop said to the pastor, so what'd you do with the $2,000? And the pastor said, we're going to talk about that next week. So everybody is at different places, so we just want to come to annual conference and just celebrate what we've done with that. The second part of that is that for the last several years, we've been talking and practicing about how to share our own faith stories. And what we'd like to do this year is talk a little bit about how can we be good listeners and help other people share their faith story with us. And one way we're going to do that, Buzz Stevens has made a ministry of this. He's written a book, Running Deep with Strangers. And it's an excellent book. If you're a pastor or a layperson, get it, read it, and you'll be looking at strangers differently afterward. So Buzz is going to talk about how it is that there are moments when we meet a stranger that they can share things with us and we can share things with them that we don't even share with people in our own churches because we don't think it's safe. We don't even share some of those things with our own family members, our own spouses. But there's something about the way God made us that as strangers we can share about that. So it's not just faith stories. It's not trying to get them to come and be a member of our church. It's simply celebrating whomever God has placed within us and being good listeners and giving each other an opportunity. So we're going to give that a shot and also have some huddle conversations about how to do that and what might scare us about that. So I'm looking forward to that. I had you.
A question was raised if Buzz's book will be on sale at annual conference.
Yes, Cokesbury's going to have copies of it there.
Yeah, we've warned Cokesbury that it'll be there, and if you're lucky, maybe Buzz will autograph it for you. Yeah. I want to ask Valerie Fairchild to come and talk about another holy huddle. Valerie and Barbara Davis-Hines and I were in a meeting all day today, and so it's a joy to have them here. But another holy huddle time will be dedicated to what we are calling respectful conversations. And since Valerie is on that planning team, I'll ask her to share a little bit about that holy huddle.
So at one point, I was just meeting with a small group of people in the house. That's where we have meetings and things like that. And there was actually a Bible study, and then I was thinking about starting a new service in the church, and I thought, well, I'll just run it by this little group and see, begin some conversation. And so I just threw the idea out, and all of a sudden, one of the men jumped to his feet, leaned forward, and said, if you do that, you're going to lose a third of the church, and that's the way it is. I was like, whoa. Quite taken aback. Had no idea that I would get that kind of a response. And we know that sort of thing happens in our churches, right? Mike's not the only one. Yeah, okay. And And we've seen it at conferences as well. And this, a struggle that we have, and certainly when we watch the media and we watch sports teams and we watch, I mean, we see so much disrespectful conversation. And so I'm really excited about this committee and what we're working on and putting together a really great tool of processes we can go through with people when we sit down to discuss an issue that could be contentious. And so we're going to model a little bit of that for you, and it won't be quite in its final product, but quite a bit of it will be done by the time we reach conference, and kind of set forth a model that you can take back and use in your churches and practice on less irritating issues, but then as you move into others, to have this model to use to lead people forward. And a lot of it is just stopping to think about what it is that gets us so irritated. You know, we were throwing around the example of color of carpet, because that's one everybody brings up. Oh, the color of the carpet, we can't decide on anything. And, you know, getting at why is it that it's so important for me to get my way on this? And to do some self-reflection and do some verbalizing about that and why we respond the way we do when someone else disagrees. And, you know, it came back to, it has nothing to do with the color of the carpet. And so I think you'll find it a very, very helpful tool. And we look forward to that. So we'll be huddling about that.
You might remember that we formed a worship committee about 3 years ago. And the worship committee's task is not to organize worship service for annual conferences. That's another group. This worship committee is to help local churches strengthen their worship services. They gave a presentation last year. They're going to share some things this year about what is good to do, what is not helpful to do. I had one friend, a minister, who said that his brother one day said to him, "Do you think you can talk to your friends, your other pastors, and yourself, and could you give us lay people in worship just 5 minutes with God? You can do anything else you want with the rest, but can you give us just 5 minutes with God?" And that kind of comes at the heart of worship. It's supposed to be a time when we connect with each other, but also when we connect with God. And we get so busy sometimes with other stuff, and when we're the ones leading it or the ones involved in it, sometimes it's hard to see that. And it's good to have eyes from the outside to come and see and to give us suggestions. So the worship committee has put together a list of mentors, and they'll be talking about this at annual conference. This is not a group that pastors have to go to. Their DSs are not going to say, "Hey, you need to go do this." It's self-selected, so if you want some outside help to come in and take a look at your worship service, see how you might be able to improve it. You might agree with them, you might not, but it's another resource that we hope will help you do that. David Devereaux is the one who will match people up with which mentor, depending on what your needs are. So they'll be talking about that at annual conference. Also, we talked about the Igniting Grants and reaching new people. Worship also has a place in that. Worship used to be the main entrance point for new people to come involved and be involved in a church. It's not the main entrance point anymore, but it still is an entrance point. And the question is, as we prepare worship, are we prepared for the guests to come? So when you're having a guest at your house, do you prepare for that? I mean, what do you do to prepare? Anybody? You clean house, right? You might cook, you might look pretty good yourself, you know, and have your guests, but you're excited to have them come. Do you know that one of the things I was excited about coming on staff was that I was going to get to go out and I was going to get to listen to some other clergy preach, and so I would go, I'd be all excited, and every time I went to the friendliest church, no one ever greeted me. I mean, they were all friendly to each other, and we're really good at that. What we're really poor at is hosting the guests when they come. And that is a part of worship as well. So we can also help with that as well. There's a lot of resources out there.
In 2012, the General Conference, which is, for any of you that might be newer, our top legislative body of our church, it met and made a resolution to charge all of our annual conferences with being a part of an ongoing process to bring healing between our church and our communities and Native Americans, our indigenous people. And so as a part of that, we started into this process, and we're going to kind of continue it and bridge from last year into next year. And one of the things we're going to focus on as a holy huddle is the practice of active listening. That seems kind of odd. Well, what does active listening mean to our Native American healing and reconciliation? And we believe that active listening, as we've been mentioning so far, that active listening is a main ingredient for healing, a main ingredient for reconciliation, and can be powerful not just in relationships between our churches and our Native American communities and our sisters and brothers, but also in a wide variety of ways within our churches and Stephen ministry and visiting others. How do we develop an intentional practice of active listening? And so we've got a team of 5 fantastic, great listeners as well as chaplains in our annual conference, and they're excited to come and share this experience as one of our holy huddles at annual conference.
Well, as you might expect, another time, an opportunity for holy huddling is what Bishop Bob started off with, talking about legislation and having an opportunity, which we began last year, to have informal discussion before we launch into the Robert's Rules of Order and worry about how many times or how long an individual gets to talk and that kind of thing. So we're going to have the resolutions holy huddle, 2 different occasions as I recall, and it'll give us an opportunity to discuss upcoming votes, resolutions that are coming to the floor, and informally share responses, reactions, thoughts, ask questions of each other, and kind of get into the mood of understanding whatever that particular resolution might be. So I look forward to that kind of time when we can be very informal and straightforward with each other. And then at an appropriate time, then the bishop would say, okay, now we're going to enter into the more formal part of that, where we decide to adopt a resolution or present amendments and that kind of thing. At the current time, I believe there are going to be 7 resolutions brought to the annual conference. Some of them are for our own activity to concern how we're going to behave in the future on some particular issue or activity. And others, because it's that pre-general conference year, we will have the opportunity to consider some resolutions that Desert Southwest may wish to endorse to pass on for consideration at general conference. So the differences in those will be explained to us at the time. What's really important is we have time between now and annual conference to get on the computer or on your little device or iPad, something other than a gizmo, and actually look at all of the resolutions. As of today, there is a draft volume 1 of the conference journal on the website and accessible through the app. So you can get online and look at all 7 of the proposed resolutions on which we will be voting in a few weeks. And I really, really, really commend this activity to you, because there's just not a simple one among them. You're going to want to take some time to absorb, to pray, to discuss perhaps with friends and family. There's some pretty weighty issues coming to us, and we can have a significant influence on what happens in our communities around the states of Arizona, Nevada, and California, and also the general church, and through the general church to the world. So I really hope that you'll take the opportunity to take a look at those resolutions and ponder what you might think about that. You might have the opportunity then to do some research. If there's a topic that is particularly different than your experience, you may want to look up some things and find out what's going on relative to those issues. So that'll give us an opportunity. We'll have the resolutions huddle, and I think that's probably going to be time well spent as you get used to what's going on, and you won't be surprised when the bishop says, now we're going to talk about this.
So that's it for the Holy Huddles. I wanted to lift up briefly one of the reports that is out there in the pre-conference materials. You probably haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet since it just came out today, but I encourage you to look at it between now and the annual conference session. And the first one of those I want to talk about is the Conference Board of Pension and Health Benefits report, and you'll find that in section 9.22. In that report, you'll note that in 2016, we are going to be changing how we're providing health insurance for our active clergy and for our other lay employees at the conference and a few churches that are on that. A couple of years ago, you remember we changed the health insurance program for our retirees out of economic necessity, and we're kind of at the same point for our active participants now. And we're changing so that we can have the long-term sustainability, which is the same reason we did the retiree change. One of the things we've been hearing from churches for many years is that the cost of providing health insurance for their clergy is just becoming too expensive. And in fact, if you look at the premiums that churches are being charged right now, it's over $10,000 for single coverage, over $19,000 for couple coverage, and over $24,000 a year for family coverage. Yet, despite those very high premiums, over the last 3 years, we've averaged paying out 115% of those premiums in terms of claims. So that's obviously not a sustainable situation over the long term. So in 2016, we are going to be one of 8 conferences that are going to be providing our health insurance through a brand new program that the denomination is putting forth. It's called HealthFlex. Has always been the general board's agency that provided our coverage. This is a HealthFlex exchange. In it, participants will be able to choose single, couple, or family coverage among 5 different plans that United Healthcare offers. Right now, it's only 2 plans, so you have greater variety. The participants will be provided a contribution level from the conference, depending on whether they do single, couple, or family coverage. They'll get $9,000 to work with for if they choose a single plan, $15,000 for a couple, and $18,000 for a family. And depending on what plan they select, they will use those funds to cover the vast majority of the premiums, but there will be some additional costs that participants will have to pay through on a pre-tax basis through payroll withholdings. And the churches will use those funds along with the funds that they're going to be paying next year to pay the premiums. So it's pretty complex, but we're going to have a whole series of workshops in the fall to go through all the details. One of the other major changes going next year is that all the churches are going to be billed, or they're going to pay a flat $12,600. Doesn't matter whether that's single, couple, or family coverage. For those churches that are providing single coverage right now, that's a little bit of an increase. For those who have couple or family, it's a substantial decrease. Some big changes. It is the Conference Board of Pension and Health Benefits' responsibility to provide the health insurance plans. So this is not any change to any conference rules. It's not something that you'll be voting on anything at annual conference, but it is included in the report. We wanted to lift it up to you. A mailing went out last week. So plan on attending one of the 4 training sessions that we're going to be having at the end of September, I think 28th through 30th, because it's going to affect all of us, whether we're participants or whether we're churches. So, yeah, Dan? those changes happened before my time. If you look at the conference rules, there's nothing that says this plan is something that we vote on. It just says that the conference provides a health insurance plan program, and that's the responsibility of the conference board. I don't know why they brought those to those time. Maybe it was major enough that they felt like they did it, but at this point we felt like it was not against the conference rules, and it was being in response to what we were hearing from the churches just out of financial necessity. Okay. Thank you.
When we were getting ready for this evening, Bishop Bob gave me some time to talk a little bit about what's on the mind of the lay leadership of the conference relative as getting ready for annual conference. What kind of things are we concerned with? And there's some things that probably won't surprise you. From a lay leadership perspective, what we're interested in is leadership development in a Wesleyan way, United Methodist way. And the question that comes to mind is what really is a United Methodist? And how do we live? Does it matter that you're United Methodists as opposed to Lutheran or Presbyterian or Roman Catholic or something else? We think it should. And so we commend to you the idea of asking yourself the question, does it make a difference in my life to understand United Methodism and to try to live it out? Living into our social principles might be an interesting place to start. See, we only have 72 of those, whereas if you're Jewish, you got 613 laws. We only have 72 social principles. So, much easier task. Just pick one and start. But that's on our mind. Does it make a difference in your life to be United Methodist? The other thing that we're most concerned with on the Board of Lay Ministry of the conference is leadership development. We know that for a congregation to thrive, you need an effective team between the pastors and the leaders among the laity. And so leadership development, we've discovered over the years, and studies have been done relatively recently, that say that congregations that are really thriving, they're changing their neighborhood, they're affecting people's lives in meaningful, tangible ways, have formal lay leadership development training. Congregations that are intentional about raising up the next generation of leaders among the laity, so that there's people prepared that as people rotate off, if you're on a 3-year cycle, which a lot of us are in a lot of the jobs, that you've got somebody coming along. And it's not only the job of an outgoing chairperson to mentor perhaps an incoming one, though that's always a good idea, but the congregation needs to take ownership for the quality of their leadership. And so charging both the pastor and the current leaders among the laity to have a formal way of getting leadership developed for the future will stand us all in good stead in terms of being able to both going from imagining to igniting to inspiring ministry. And those kinds of things are really important. Well, how about being a lay member of annual conference? That's an important title. It's not a representative, it's not a delegate, it's a lay member. And you have some responsibilities. And some of those are detailed in our conference rules. But what we want to lift up for this purpose tonight is to remind you to prayerfully approach annual conference, to faithfully study the materials ahead of time, to be prepared, to participate in everything that we do, and then to take home a comprehensive report. And report is such a dry word. Share your experience. What was it like? Were you in fact inspired by what went on? And what difference will that make in your congregation when you get home? Those kinds of things are the most important role, I think, for a lay member of annual conference. So please think about that. During the ministry fair, Thursday from 12 to 2, Anthony talked about these scads of tables that are going to be out there. Several of them are going to be related to the ministry of the laity. The Board of Lay Ministry will have a table. Bill Price over here will have a table. He's our conference director of Lay Servant Ministries. Recently moved from Prescott to down, he's staying in the West District, but he came down and is now living out in the Sun City area, right? Yeah. So he and Mildred are closer neighbors now. So if you want to bug him about Lay Servant Ministry, it's now a local call. So, but we're all going to be there with the idea of helping the congregation in terms of lay ministry and what's going on. I've got a couple of samples of things we're going to be handing out. Communicate Vitality is one of the brochures that comes from United Methodist Communications. It's a catalog about scads, literally scads, that's another technical term, of resources that are related to having the ministry of your congregation become more vital. Another thing I think you'll find, there's a series of little 5x8 cards from the General Board of Church and Society that talk about many of the perspectives that the United Methodist Church has. What do we stand for? What does it mean to be United Methodist? I just grabbed one off the top of the pile. This one is on climate justice, economic and environmental justice. There are about 14 or 15 of these, and we'll have these at our table. But the format is really interesting and very, very helpful. Every card has the same format regardless of subject. What does the Bible say is the first entry on the card, and it gives scripture references and a short discussion. The second, what does the United Methodist Church say? Do we have some legislation on record, for example, in the Book of Resolutions, that deals with this subject? On the back, what do the facts say? Not influenced by us'ns, but here's what's going on in the world. And then some questions. The last section is, what do you say? So looking at it from a biblical, United Methodist, and fact-based, you can get a handy-dandy little thing, in this case, on climate justice. So we'll have these available in all those subjects. And lastly, we want to be hearing from you, not be in a position of having you have to hear something from the conference all the time. We would like to be able to respond, being the Board of Lay Ministry, to your congregations, pastor and laity alike. And we would like to hear from you those things that you would like to be resourced in. What would you like to learn about? What would you like to have us maybe come and lead workshops in? That kind of thing. And so we can respond best to requests. What's on your mind? What works best in your context, that instead of just broadcasting something out over the conference, we can come down to the local level and say, okay, in your neighborhood, you've asked about A, B, and C, and we're here to see what we can do to resource you and help you in that kind of ministry. Okay? Now we get to the exciting part. Somehow this year I got tasked to talk about the app. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, but perhaps I missed the meeting, and they decided that it would be a good idea to give you a heads up. If you've been at conference, last year is the first year we used this application called Guidebook, like a tour guide. And it's the application that has all of the stuff that you're going to need to know before conference and during conference, and in fact after conference. So to me, I heard many, many, many years ago in business that any scientific endeavor that is carried to its maximum perspective is indistinguishable from magic. So that's what we're doing, trying to bring magic to annual conference. We'll see if you go to the conference webpage, this is the common conference website, dscumc.org/AC, or you can find annual conference and click on the link. This is what you get. And if you look to where the red arrow is showing over there, down in here, wherever the pointer works on the wall, doesn't do too well on the screen, you will see the way to access guidebook. So you'll get the little pointer hand on your screen. You click on that and go to the guidebook application. You'll find that there are 3 ways to access guidebook depending on the kind of a device that you have. The first one on the left, you see the little apple. So if you have an iOS or operating system, whether it's an iPad, iPhone, or a tablet that uses that system, that's where you would click. The middle one is that little alien guy. That's the Android symbol. So if you have an Android phone or an Android tablet, that's how you'll access it. And then the little computer screen on the right-hand side that has the little arrow below it right now, if you have a PC, that's how you do it. So there's 3 different ways of getting to this application. And we're just going to show you briefly one of the ways. If you were to do the PC-based one, this is what you would get. There are document groupings. All of the main things you're going to need to know are in the table of contents on the left-hand side. And then once you start to click on those, the information will come on the larger part of the screen. So there's one of them called Documents and Procedures. And you see that here. This has been clicked, and you get another menu then, and you'll find that this is really a tremendous help. This particular page is one that you'll use the most before and during conference, I would think. There is an explanation of what's going on with our elections and process. There is a form that we are really hoping that everyone has a chance to fill out. This is the conference nominating and leadership development team has come up with a skills and passion survey. This is how you can let the team know that you're interested in serving beyond your local church, because we will share this at the district level as well. And instead of just saying, okay, I live in South District and I've been in the church for 6 years or whatever, there are questions here around your the skills you perceive that you have and the passions that you have for ministry. Why do we have this form? Primarily so we can do the best job possible of linking up you and your talent and passion with the various leadership opportunities, committees, task forces, and so on that serve the conference and the district. So that's what we're going to ask you to do for that. The reports and resolutions one, which is where the red arrow is, gives you access to the journal that I mentioned, the draft journal that's there, and all of the resolutions, all of the reports. So the formal written reports from United Methodist Women or our Education Commission, things like that are there, but all of the resolutions and other things, plus the section that Randy loves most, all of the resolutions and things having to do with our budget are listed there, and they're there already. Remembering this is the draft version at this point, but all of that is accessible to you in that place. There is the strategic direction brochure. If you'd like to print one out to give out to your friends and neighbors, you can do that. But it's there accessible for you. There's the latest version of the annual conference agenda so that you can figure out where you're supposed to be when and and if you're going to a special luncheon, what day it is, and that kind of thing. And some things that are really, really important that you really often might not have access to if you have not been one of those faithful that's run out and purchased the Discipline and the Book of Resolutions. They're available online, right there. So if there's something that comes up during conference and we're proposing a resolution that might change the Book of Discipline, you can see right off the bat what it is now and listen to what's being proposed for a change. Same with the Book of Resolutions. And so that's the first time we've made that generally available to all the members of the conference. So that's pretty neat page to take a look at. If you went to the next page, this slide was made before today, but right now you'll find the draft resolutions listed there as well, besides the sample that's referenced. I think what they've done is given us the, Okay, this is how you're going to get there. This is going to be the way of approaching the app if you have an iPad, iPhone, or device like that. You're going to get this picture instead of the other one. And Guidebook will come up. If you have never had Guidebook on your particular device before, you're going to get this general worldwide guidebook thing. And you're going to be able to go into the application and search for our conference. And if you just type in the word desert, we are the first one in alphabetical order within the whole category of deserts around the world. So you will find that if you do desert, this is what you're going to see. Those other things there you probably are not going to be interested in, plus you won't have a password to get to. But Desert Southwest Annual Conference, you'll be able to do. And if you happen to get one that has 2014 and then a different icon for 2015, we strongly recommend using 2015, because the other one will just dump you into some endless do loop. So click on the 2015. This one happens to have the old one as well. So you're looking for the one with hashtag DSCUMC and not last year's. But Guidebook doesn't clean house or throw out the trash, so the old one is still going to be there. This is what you get as you get farther down into the system and search for our guidebook. This is just a screen capture of what the iPad entry screen will look like. Depending on whether you have a phone, a tablet, they're going to be slightly different in appearance just on how the architecture goes. Okay, back to reports and resolutions. This tells you what the rules were in terms of getting reports and resolutions in by May 15th, and this is an iPad version as well. So it looks very similar to what we saw a couple of minutes ago. If you want to see what a sample resolution looks like, you can do this. Since the real resolutions are there now, you may not want to bother with the sample. Should you have problems, you can contact our communications department, either with phone or with that particular email handle, and be able to get your questions answered. Strongly ask and advise that you take a look at the app well in advance. Make sure you're comfortable with your device accessing the stuff. And if you have issues, please call the communications folks and get your questions answered. That way, when you get to conference and there's something going on, you don't want to be hassling with your device. You want to be listening to what's happening participating in worship, participating in the voting, and whatever it might be. So please do it early. For those of you who have other people from your congregations who are not here tonight, please get the word to them. Do it ahead of time. Don't wait till the last minute. If the electrons don't behave, we don't want you to feel left out. So get everything done. A plea from our communications department, I'm getting paid extra for this, is social media etiquette. What do we expect at annual conference? You know how much fun it is if somebody were allowed to talk on their phone on an aircraft? Well, we got 600 of us sitting in the airplane in the Imaginarium, and we just as soon not have that happen. So hopefully we're not going to be messing with our stuff during presentations and worship. During the holy huddles, you're going to be wanting to talk to each other and not going off into the social media universe. There are plenty of other times to be dealing with social media. Now there will be an assistance booth, if you will, a help table, staffed most of the time at annual conference in the Imaginarium. So we hope that you get all hitched up ahead of time and have nothing but smooth sailing when you get there. But in the event that something happens during conference, there'll be somebody there, probably under the age of 25, who speaks this language and can help you out. But there's plenty of other opportunities. Why might you consider using social media at conference? Well, there are lots of good reasons. Staying up with what's happening is one of them. But the hashtag we're using for a whole variety of social media, whether it's going to be Twitter or Pinterest or anything else, the hashtag DSCUMC will be the same for all different aspects of social media. So if you're going to be tweeting back home or tweeting to have somebody at the conference to see what you're thinking and all that, you can use this hashtag, and people in attendance at annual conference will see what you're thinking and what you're doing. It's a way to share information, to share your perspective on something that's going on, and that sort of thing. So it's a good way to share. Let people in your congregation know that if they want to also get in on the fun, they can have a Twitter account, of course, and using that hashtag, people at annual conference will see what's happening. So most of you know that are involved with this that you can put more than one hashtag in a tweet and other things, and there'll be other opportunities. But our main one is the DSC UMC. Between now and annual conference, if you're getting conference notes, you're going to start to see, leading up to conference, some prompts from the communications folk, maybe from some other staff people, getting us ready, and you can practice using this in whatever particular social media expression that you use. So we're hopeful that this will work for us this year. It is slightly improved from last year, and it's going to be an interesting time to see if we can keep up with each other. There's a lot. It's a jam-packed annual conference. So practice the app, get good with it, send messages to each other, send messages to the conference, and as I said earlier, look at the resolutions, look at all the stuff you're going to vote on, and you'll be miles ahead when you get there.
Friends, when you registered for annual conference, I hope you had an opportunity to sign up for one of our Saturday missions. We've got everything from crafting to knitting all the way to manual labor at the Phoenix Tool Bank, Phoenix Community Tool Bank, and the Habitat for Humanity Restore. You can even help to build a house at one of the Habitat construction sites. So if you perhaps It may not have been up when you registered. If you didn't get registered, let me know. We want to get you signed up. There's many different opportunities, and they're all available on the website as well. If you have any questions about Saturday missions, I'd love to share them with you. It's going to be a great morning.
Thanks, Anthony. One other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is everyone's favorite subject, apportionments. I get all the good stuff up here. Everybody, I should have brought some tomatoes. It's the nature of the job, but this I think is some good stuff. I think most of you know that apportionments are simply a way to ask each church in our conference to contribute its fair share of the conference budget. And there's a wealth of information in the pre-conference material, specifically if you look at 9.16, 9.17, and 9.18, that go through how we calculate what is a fair share. And it's a little bit based on membership, mainly based on the level of expenses that you reported in your statistical tables last year. And the bottom line is that the larger a church is in terms of membership or expenses, the larger the portion of the conference budget that it seems fair to ask them to cover. So that's kind of the mechanical aspect of apportionments, and I do get questions a lot about that, so I encourage you to take a look at it. But in my mind, the way more important part is how apportionments allow us to do ministry through our connectional system in a way that we couldn't possibly do on our own as individual churches. If you take a look at some of the things in our conference budget, which Lois will present at annual conference, and see some of the line items in there, you can see that there are some amazing ways that we can do ministry when we join together in places that we couldn't possibly do if we were just individual churches doing it on our own. So I want to take a few moments to lift up some of those. The conference budget is in 9.13. The first thing you'll notice when you look at that is that the proposed budget for 2016 is a little over a 1.5% decrease from the current year budget. That was based on the decrease that we saw in the local church spending in the statistical tables last year. But even with that decreased budget, we're still going to be able to do some pretty amazing things. One of the things I like to lift up first is that included in there is the payment of our general church apportionments, which allows us to really do ministry all over the world. That includes missionaries and other mission work. It funds all the general boards and agencies that provide a lot of the resources that we have available for the local churches. In particular, I like to note that it pays all of the administrative costs for UMCOR, so that when we get contributions for natural disasters like we've had recently for the Nepal earthquake, that 100% of that goes for that disaster. Nothing is eaten up by administration because it's already covered by apportionments. So we cover our general church apportionments. Your conference apportionments also support new church starts. It's been proven that's one of the most effective ways of reaching new and unchurched people, and we have a lot of exciting examples. We have City Square here in Phoenix, Grace Phil Am up in Las Vegas, Santa Clara down in Tucson, just to name some across our conference. So that's one of the main things that you can help do ministry all over the conference through your apportionments. Apportionments also fund our urban ministries. I think many of you provide some direct support, but even through your apportionments, you're supporting 5 urban ministries, TMM Family Services in Tucson, United Methodist Social Ministries in Las Vegas, and then here in the Valley, we have Justice Center UMOM and Wesley Community Center. And these are agencies that are really frontline ministry performers. They're providing food and housing and hope to some of the neediest people in our community. So I think that's something we can really be proud of. Apportionment support, youth attending summer camp, and that truly is an opportunity for people to occasionally experience that mountaintop experience. Some of you in here might have committed yourself to Christ at a youth camp. Some people even felt the call to clergy. And Jody and some of the others have spent many years leading camps there, and it continues to be a way that we can reach a lot of people. Your apportionments help support some of the poor churches in our conference. Some of these are missional in nature. Some are in rural areas that may provide the only Protestant worship opportunity for miles around. And this is a way for them to be able to pay a full-time clergy person that they couldn't possibly afford on their own. Our apportionments support the campus ministries. Rob's the chair of that. We provide the campus ministries at UNLV, or provide support for campus ministries at UNLV, NAU, ASU, and U of A. Dan was very involved down at U of A for many years. I mean, again, we're reaching people at some of the most pivotal points in their life. So another way that we can really reach way beyond our own congregation through apportionments. We also, through apportionments, are able to provide some scholarships for seminary students. I think many of you know that over the next, Dan certainly as head of Board of Ordained Ministry knows that over the next 10 years we're going to have a lot of people retiring, and it's really critical that we get young clergy to fill the needs. I think we've started to see some increase in the last couple of years. So that's good, but we know that seminary education is terribly expensive, so some of the scholarships that we can provide at least provide a little bit of help there. So there's a lot of ways that your apportionments help do ministry way beyond your own local church. So I thank you for your faithful support of that. Take a look at the individual budget line items when you get a chance between now and conference. And if you have any questions, give me a call or talk to Lois. So thank you.
Every year, you know, we have a annual conference mission project, and this year we're collecting tuna and beans. When I'm not traveling the conference, I'm at the church where my charge is. That's at Faith with Jody, and she's always pushing, let's get the tuna, let's get the beans. That's right. So hopefully everybody else is doing that as well. You might remember last year we did the socks, and we threw the socks at the bishop. This year he doesn't want us bringing the cans of tuna to annual conference. So it's to support the food banks either in the church that you're at or within the community itself. So make sure you get that to the places that's going to help the people who need it the most. But you need to do at least two things by June 15th. You need to take a picture of all that you've collected, do it whatever way you want. Send that picture to Christina. It's best to send her it electronically, okay? The second thing is to count the cans and weigh the beans and send that amount to Billy. Now, if you can't remember who to send it to any of us at annual conference headquarters, and we'll get it to the people who need to get it. Any questions about that? Well, I can tell you, I was in the South District on Sunday at Sierra Vista, and the lay person got up and said, now look at, last year we had to go up there to the Phoenix area, and we took all we had, and the other districts, they went out and bought more socks to beat us because they live in that area. So this year, we're going to beat the other districts, so we'll see how we all do.
This year, there's a special prize to the district that wins the competition. And the conference staff has devised a fair and equitable system to level the playing field, because we realize that some of the districts are smaller than the others. So I don't know what the secret formula is, but there is an equalization formula. So you're all on the same playing field, but there is a wonderful prize that will be awarded the last day of annual conference. Tuna and beans. Let me just ask, do you have any questions? We're doing really well with time, so do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? Yes?
I did forget to mention that there's going to be a celebrity at annual conference, but he won't go to be there, but he's been videotaped from what I hear, and I heard you interviewed him.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to that at annual conference.
Okay, surprise. I participated in a special interview with a well-known celebrity, and that video will be shown at the annual conference. Who told you that? Okay, any questions that you have? I'm excited about a number of things about annual conference. We're going to be celebrating, and Anthony sort of painted the picture of the ministry fair. But you realize that when we go to annual conference, it can sometimes be a place where we sit and we receive information through reports. You know how that is? So I've sat through so many of those annual conferences, and then I realized that really for me, in a local church setting, whether I was a pastor or when I was a layperson, what really excited me was to be able to get ideas. You know, not only to pick up a brochure about something, but to have an opportunity to talk with someone about what excites them about these particular ideas. So the Ignite grants are meant to share ideas, share some frustrations maybe, but to share the ideas and help other churches to not only spend a check, but also to really mount an effort to do something new and creative. So the $2,000 that you received as an Ignite grant was really seed money. And so I'm curious to know how that seed money has become a treasure for you and has erupted in something new and different. We may not see the end result of the Ignite grant process for a number of years. But I'm excited to hear about churches that use that Ignite grant as a starting place, and that from that starting place, new things are emerging. And I believe that that's the way that we are going to bring vitality to our local churches. There are many things happening at annual conference that you will see around the edges. We'll be talking about Imagine No Malaria. This will be an opportunity for us to hopefully bring to a conclusion our effort to raise goals of $2 million. There are still a number of churches who have not set goals, and so we're anxious to encourage them to do so. Gary Henderson, who is our denomination's executive for global health, is going to be our guest again. My big dream was that we would call Gary on stage and that we would have some folks bring him a check for $2 million. He would love to see that, but we're not sure that it's going to happen yet. But Raleigh Loomis continues to be our point person to encourage people to contribute for Imagine No Malaria. And I believe with God's help and with all your help, we are going to get to our $2 million goal. We also have an opportunity at annual conference to engage in some time of service, and I wanted to share a word about why service is important. When I was a student in seminary, I went to Claremont Seminary, and Claremont was known as one of those places where there were a lot of world-class famous professors. You know, and so it attracted my attention when I was looking for a seminary. Well, when I got to the seminary, I was in the company of some world-class scholars, and I was in the company of some really great colleague students. But there was something that was missing in my life, and it was that I was finding it so difficult to put all my book learning into some practical application. And so what I decided to do was to go to the employment office at the school and look for a position that I could fill doing local church ministry on the weekends. I found that the balance of hearing and learning and listening and actually doing, the balance of those two really enriched who I was as a disciple of Jesus Christ. And so as an annual conference, two things. We need to put into practice the things that we know in our heart about caring for others. So these opportunities to be in service it's just one of the ways that we do that. Secondly, I would love to have people say, thank God the United Methodists were here. You know, I just read in the paper today about some fraternities and sororities that were being chastised for breaking rules and engaging in hazing. You know, and one of the things that happens when fraternities do that is that they get cut off from the program of the school. So the school says, we don't want you here anymore. And one of the ways in which fraternities make amends for any of their misdoings is that they sometimes offer apologies to the neighborhood. You know, I can just imagine that. I'm sorry we were so noisy, I'm sorry we were drunk, and I'm sorry we were disruptive. You know, what does that say about presence in the community? We don't get a lot of complaints about United Methodists being in the community, thank God. But by the same token, I don't get a lot of the other side of the coin either. I'd love to have people in the community around the Renaissance Hotel come to us and say, thank goodness the United Methodists were here. And we demonstrate that in part by going outside of our comfortable Renaissance zone and doing something special for the neighborhood and others. I want to share with you a little story about one of the projects that we are having as an opportunity for you. It's one that's personal and it's really special for me. Some of you know that Greta and I got involved in taking Zumba when we arrived here. I say that very quietly. Don't ask for a demonstration. But our Zumba instructor was just a wonderfully energetic, vivacious instructor. Her name is Alma. And Alma and Greta and I became friends. And then we came to know about a year ago now that Alma's 9-year-old daughter, who is autistic, was diagnosed with cancer. And so 9-year-old daughter has been going through chemotherapy. And Alma's husband is a physician, but Alma confessed to us that one of the most difficult things was trying to explain to a 9-year-old autistic daughter what cancer was all about and why she had to undergo all of the difficulties of being treated for cancer. And so they decided to come up with this phrase. They explained to their daughter that she had poopy cells, and that the cancer represented poopy cells, and that all of the medications she was taking, all the IVs and needles, were designed to get rid of those poopy cells. And that somehow spoke to her. And so their daughter then began this campaign where she would have her friends and relatives take pictures of them sticking their tongue out. And it was really say no to poopy cells. And so there's a website for this. So Greta and I took our picture of sticking our tongues out. Not a great picture, but what we wanted to say was, we are with you as you fight the poopy cells in your life. So Alma came up with this idea that her daughter was very much afraid and cried whenever the doctors and nurses wheeled in one of those IV poles. You know, it's a frightening thing, and it meant that she was going to get stuck. And so they began a project which is designed to create a cover for the machinery on that IV pole. Thank you. And so one of the projects that we will have at annual conference, for those of you who don't want to go outside, will be to come and to meet Alma and to have an opportunity to make one of those IV pole covers out of felt and fabric. The only thing is we are asking that those of you who would like to participate in that donate $25 to cover the materials. And I think that will be
on sale. It's just $20.
Oh, $20 on sale. Thank you. And I think it's going to be considered a tax-deductible gift, donation. But you will have an opportunity to create an IV pole cover. And I think the designs have eyes, a nose, and a tongue sticking out of a mouth. to say no more poopy selves. And so you'll get, those of you who want to do that will get to meet Alma, and we'll be there to support her. Her goal is to provide, to gift the hospital with 5,000 IV covers. And so that's her mission, to help calm the fears of children, especially who are dealing with something as incredibly threatening as cancer. So I wanted to share that with you, and I wanted to then say we are looking forward. I'm really looking forward. For me, annual conference is a party time. It's an opportunity for us to get together, to enjoy great worship, to be in fellowship with one another, to learn and to grow, and to laugh together, because we know that in our fellowship there is joy in being together. So I'm hopeful that we will be a part of a wonderful opportunity to learn, to grow, to relate, to pray, and to be inspired by the Spirit of God, that we might in turn inspire others to become disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Looking forward to seeing you, and look forward to your reflections on ways that you have experienced an inspiration at annual conference. Before we ask Gary to close us, are there any comments or questions that you want to share? If not, let me thank you again for being here. And Gary, would you bring us to a close?
Let us pray. Loving God, we thank you that we have learned so much, heard so much about how a meeting can be so exciting and inspiring. Be with us that we might fully take advantage of the many opportunities at the annual conference session, for us to be enriched, inspired ourselves, and for us to gather information and tools to return to our churches. For this evening and for the wonderful presentations, we are grateful. And we ask that you be with us as we prepare ourselves by reading materials and researching what we need to. But most of all, help us all to be in prayer for annual conference session from now until the beginning of the session. For all these things, for this wonderful evening, we thank you. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.